The mornings were the hardest. I'd hear the kettle whistling, see the frost clinging to her window, and then watch her struggle to lift her favorite mug, her fingers stiff, her face tightening with pain, as if even holding warm tea was too much. In that moment, it wasn't just arthritis I saw. It was the fear behind her eyes. The fear of losing independence, of life getting smaller with every cold morning. And as her caregiver, I felt it too. The worry, the frustration, the quiet determination that whispered, there has to be a way to help her fight back. That's why I want to share this story with you. Because winter joint pain doesn't just steal comfort, it steals freedom. And yet, I discovered a simple, gentle fix that gave her strength back. And it might do the same for you. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what made the difference. Something safe, believable, and practical, backed not by theory, but by real caregiving experience. A small change that restored dignity, vitality, and hope. But before we reached that moment of relief, the struggle was real, and it's there that this story truly begins. Her name is Samantha. She's 68 with silver hair that still shines when the sun catches it just right, and a quiet humor that slips out when you least expect it. In her younger years, she worked as a school librarian, always the one to slip an extra book recommendation into a child's hands, the kind of woman who remembered birthdays and baked cookies for neighbors. Now she lives alone in a small brick house on the edge of town. Winters there feel heavier. The hallways are drafty, the air always carrying a hint of cold no matter how high the heater hums. When I first walked in to help her, you could almost feel the quiet pressing in. The kind of silence that lingers after family has moved away and the days run together. I'd been her caregiver for nearly a year. And over that time, I'd come to see not just her condition, but the woman beneath it. Proud, independent, a little stubborn. The kind of person who hated asking for help, even when she clearly needed it. She'd tell me, I don't want to be a burden, even as her hands trembled while trying to button her cardigan. Her struggles weren't dramatic, they were daily. The stiffness in her fingers each morning, the way she rubbed her knees after walking just a few steps, the fatigue that clouded her once bright conversations. Some days she'd laugh it off, but I could see the weariness in her posture, hear it in her voice. And underneath it all was a fear she rarely said aloud, that she was losing pieces of the life she loved, one slow winter day at a time. For me, watching her was never easy. I felt her frustration echo in my own chest. Each time she winced, I felt a pang of helplessness, but I also felt a deep determination. Because women like Samantha deserve more than to fade quietly into pain. She reminded me of so many women I've met, mothers, aunts, grandmothers, holding on to dignity, still wanting to feel useful, still longing to live freely, even as their bodies whispered otherwise. And yet, what struck me most was this. Samantha's struggles weren't simply old age. No, there were small, hidden choices in her routine that made her winters harder than they needed to be. And that's where our story begins to shift. The mornings told the story best. I'd walk in and see Samantha sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the buttons on her cardigan as though they were mountains. Her fingers would fumble, stiff and slow, and sometimes she'd let out a sigh so heavy it filled the whole room. "Just leave it," she'd mutter, waving me off with a mix of pride and defeat. But the look in her eyes betrayed her. She hated needing me for something she used to do in seconds. It wasn't only the buttons. Jars of jams she once opened with ease now stayed shut, no matter how hard she tried. Her steps across the living room grew shorter, almost a shuffle, her hand gripping the armrest of the chair for balance. And then there were the moments she tried to hide. I'd hear the catch in her breath when she bent to pick something up, or see her rub her knees under the table when she thought I wasn't looking. Sometimes her voice carried a sharp edge, snapping at me out of frustration. Other times, it softened into silence, her eyes welling with tears she didn't want me to notice. For me, it wasn't just her joints I was watching break down. It was her spirit slowly dimming. Samantha, the woman who once laughed loudly, who used to hum while knitting, was now shrinking into herself. And each day I asked myself, how do I help her find that spark again? We tried things, of course. Creams from the pharmacy that promised relief but only left her skin sticky and her hands just as stiff. A hot water bottle that gave comfort for a few minutes only to cool too quickly. Even skipping the activities she once loved, hoping rest would help. But the truth, none of it worked. If anything, it chipped away at her hope. I'll never forget the day she said quietly, "Maybe this is just old age. Maybe I should stop fighting it." That broke me, because underneath her words was the fear so many women her age carry, that life was slipping away and all she could do was watch it happen. As her caregiver, I felt that helplessness too. I wanted to be the answer, but I was running out of ideas. Still, I couldn't accept that this was the end of the road. Something in me refused to give up on her, because I knew there had to be a better way. And just when it felt like we were out of options, I stumbled across something simple, something that would change her winter completely. I remember the small clues at first. The tiny things that didn't look like a solution until you saw them together. One morning, I watched Samantha stand over the stove, warming her hands on the side of a teapot. She closed her eyes and sighed, and for a moment, the tightness in her face eased. That stuck with me. Another day, she shuffled in from the mailbox, and after cradling the mail against her chest for a few minutes, she moved a little easier. Heat seemed to buy her minutes of comfort. Not cure, but comfort. So I started watching more carefully. Her stiffness flared after long sits, after the house grew cold, or when she'd been still too long. When we warmed her hands or wrapped a towel around her knees, she relaxed. When we used a cold pack for an old bruise, the relief vanished quickly. Patterns were forming in front of my eyes, but I still felt nervous. Was I seeing hope or wishful thinking? I did what any stubborn caregiver does. I researched and asked. I read a few articles, skimmed caregiver forums late at night, and then I called a physiotherapist I'd met briefly at a community clinic. I explained Samantha's mornings, the button struggles, the jar battles, the way she hummed less. The physio listened and said something simple and sensible. Try targeted short heat to loosen tissue before movement, then follow with gentle mobility work. Not a workout, just movement to remind the joints they can move. Nothing mystical, just a plan that felt careful and doable. That night, I told Samantha what I was thinking. She folded her hands and raised a skeptical eyebrow. "So, a blanket and a few stretches and I'll be dancing?" she teased. But the humor didn't hide the hesitation. I told her we'd keep it tiny. 10 minutes of warmth, a few gentle movements, nothing that made her push past comfort. She agreed with a half smile, the cautious sort that trusts because it has to. I remember feeling both excited and frightened. What if this was another letdown? what if it made no difference and chipped away at her hope more? We tested it like scientists with a kitchen table and a tea towel. First, local warmth, a towel soaked in hot water and wrung out, folded over her knees, a microwavable heat pack wrapped in a thin cloth for her hands, a warm foot soak on one evening when her ankles felt icy. Nothing extreme, just enough warmth to feel pleasant and safe. Then, one by one, I guided her through tiny movements. Slow wrist circles, gentle finger opens, spread and curl, seated heel slides, slide heel forward and back while seated, and a small, careful knee lift with support. Each movement was explained and demonstrated. We never chased range of motion. We chased comfort and confidence. Her first reaction was a raised eyebrow and a slow, doubtful breath. But after the towel warmed into the shape of her knees, she exhaled, a small, surprise sound, and her fingers loosened enough to roll a button between them. Not a miracle, but a hint. I wrote it down in a notebook. Day 1, heat, plus 6 movements, small loosen. That little note made me feel oddly scientific and oddly hopeful. We didn't promise the world. I told her plainly, we'll try this for 2 weeks, small and steady. If it helps, we keep doing it. If nothing changes, we reassess. She nodded and reached for my hand. A quiet pact. In that moment, the tension in the room shifted, from resignation to a tiny, guarded hope. That was the day we made a promise to try. Neither of us knew if it would work, but deep down, I felt this could change everything. What followed was not instant magic. It was a steady, day-by-day experiment. And that journey began the very next morning. The first morning we tried, Samantha sat stiff in her chair, her lips pressed tight, eyes on the floor. I placed the warm pad gently across her knees. She flinched at first, muttering, "It won't make a difference." Her fingers hovered over the fabric, as though even trust was stiff. When I suggested the first wrist circle, she shook her head. "Too tight," she whispered. That was day 1, nothing but hesitation. And yet I stayed, holding the towel in place, waiting with her, breathing slow, as if my patience could thaw more than the winter. By day 3, something shifted. Not much, but enough. After 10 minutes with the heat pack, her fingers uncurled just slightly. She rubbed her thumb across her palm and looked up at me with cautious eyes. "Feels lighter," she said. It wasn't dramatic, but for me, it was gold. I wrote it in my notebook. Day 3, loosen in fingers after heat. On day 5, she grew frustrated. Her knees ached despite the warmth, and she snapped, "This is pointless. I'm old, not broken in like leather shoes." That night she cried quietly, shoulders slumped against the lamplight. I remember sitting there, feeling helpless, but also determined not to let her slip back into that hopeless silence. I reassured her, it's not about fixing everything, it's about small wins, one at a time. By day 7, something remarkable happened. She fumbled with her blouse and then, with a shaky laugh, buttoned it herself. "Well," she chuckled, "that's one less thing you have to do for me." That moment lit her up. Not just her hands, her spirit. I saw her shoulders lift, her eyes shine. It was pride, plain and simple. The weeks rolled on, each day different. Some mornings she refused outright, too sore, too weary, waving me away with a sharp, "Not today." I didn't push. Other mornings, she surprised us both, finishing the gentle stretches and humming as she sipped her tea. Little by little, her movements smoothed. Her laughter returned in short bursts. Her complaints softened. My role was simple, yet constant. Warming the pad in the microwave, draping it across her shoulders or knees, guiding her through the movements, sometimes with words, sometimes with my own slow demonstration beside her. And always reminding her that progress was not measured in leaps, but in the courage to keep trying. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, doubts, even tears. But beneath it all, there was persistence. And through persistence, the smallest shifts became stepping stones. And then the breakthrough came. I'll never forget the morning it truly sank in. Samantha stepped out onto her porch with me, the winter air sharp on our cheeks. For weeks, she hadn't dared go outside before noon, but that day, she stood a little taller. She wrapped her scarf herself, held the railing, and looked out at the frost-tipped garden. "It feels good to breathe the cold again," she whispered, and her smile carried something I hadn't seen in months: pride. It wasn't overnight, it was earned. One heat pack, one stretch, one determined breath at a time. But slowly, the little victories piled up. She could button her blouse without asking me to do it. She reached for her knitting needles again, her fingers clumsy, but willing. She opened a jar of jam one morning and turned to me, tears brimming in her eyes. "I did it," she said softly, "on my own." I can't explain the rush of emotion that hit me. Relief, joy, but more than that, a deep respect. She wasn't just moving more freely, she was reclaiming herself piece by piece. And I knew every senior woman watching this would understand. It's not about the jar or the blouse or even the knitting. It's about dignity, about waking up and still feeling like you. The ripple effects were everywhere. Her mood lifted, she laughed more, even teased me again. She walked with me to the corner shop one bright afternoon, bundled in her coat, proud of each careful step. Independence returned not as a miracle, but as a gift she'd earned and guarded fiercely. And I want to pause here, speaking directly to you. If you're a woman over 60 or caring for one, this is what I want you to hold on to. You are not your pain. You are not your stiffness. You are not fading away. With the right care, with small, steady habits, you can feel like yourself again. Strong, capable, dignified. That's what Samantha showed me, and it's what every woman deserves. So let me share exactly what we did, step by step, so you can try too. Looking back, the solution that helped Samantha wasn't complicated at all. It wasn't an expensive gadget or a harsh workout plan or something she couldn't stick to. It was simple, gentle, and consistent. And that's why it worked. Here's what we did, step by step. 1. Warm the joints first. We used a microwavable heat pad, sometimes just a towel soaked in hot water and wrung out. 10 minutes of warmth made her knees and hands feel less like stone and more like living tissue again. You can do this with a warm bath, a hot water bottle, even a cozy soak for the hands or feet. 2. Add gentle morning stretches. Nothing extreme, just simple movements, opening and closing the fingers, rolling the wrists, sliding the heels forward and back while seated, lifting the knees slightly with support. The goal wasn't to push, it was to remind her joints they still could move. 3. Stay consistent. Even 10 minutes a day made the difference. Not every day was perfect, but the rhythm of showing up mattered more than the effort itself. 4. Adjust to comfort. We never pushed into pain. If a movement felt sharp or wrong, we stopped. This was about loosening, not straining. Her body slowly taught us what it could handle, and with patience, it grew kinder to her. And 5, pair with encouragement.
Mindset mattered as much as movement. On the days she doubted herself, I reminded her of the little wins: a button fastened, a jar opened, a walk taken. Encouragement is part of the medicine. That's all it took. A warm pad, a few gentle stretches, steady consistency, and a whole lot of patience. It didn't take hours. It didn't take money. What it took was persistence and a little hope. And Samantha's story is proof. If it could bring her laughter back, if it could help her feel like herself again, then it can give you strength too. And that's why I'm sharing this with you, because your story isn't over either. If you're a woman over 60, or if you love one, I want you to hold this close. Your independence, your dignity, your vitality, they're worth protecting. You are not defined by stiffness, by pain, or by the number of candles on your cake. You are defined by the strength you've carried through every season of your life. That's what this channel is all about. A circle of women and caregivers like me, walking together, sharing stories, sharing hope, reminding each other that none of us are alone in this journey. I call it the Caregiver Circle, and I'd love for you to be part of it. So if this story touched you, subscribe, share it with a friend, and keep walking with us. And if you're looking for more gentle guidance, I put together a little gift for you, my book, Stronger Than You Think. Inside, you'll find stories just like Samantha's, plus simple habits to keep your body, mind, and soul fresh after 60. You'll find the link in the description. But most of all, I want you to remember, your story isn't ending, it's just beginning, with strength, with dignity, and with hope. Thank you for being here. Share your own story in the comments. Tell us how you've faced challenges like this and what's helped you along the way, because your voice might be the encouragement another woman needs today. I'll see you in the next video.